Hi, it's Scott Allen. Today I want to look at what the Wallabies have got to do to counter the threat from the Lions at scrum time. Let's start with footage from the first test in Brisbane, where the Lions well and truly got on top of the Wallabies in this scrum. I'm going to go into some detail in the rest of this video of what was going on in this scrum, but it's safe to say there are a number of technical issues for the Wallabies. First up, it's how they set up. I'll start with Ben Alexander on the tight head side. He's got two issues with his setup. The first is he's too high, and by that I mean his hips are too high. I've frozen the footage here before they go into the final crouch, but you can see that Alexander's hips are well above that of Corbizero, the Lions' loosehead. Then as they go into the final crouch, the second problem, he drops his shoulders down below his hips. Regardless of the fact that that's an illegal setup, it puts him in a really weak position to resist the force that comes through from Corbizero. You'll see that Alexander sets up with his legs almost straight. That means there's no way he can get down low enough to match Corbizero. As they engage, you'll see that with Corbizero being under Alexander, he's actually lifting him up even a little further than from where he's set up. That means Alexander starts backpedaling, and because he's not low enough, there's no way he can resist the force coming through. It's not helped by the fact that the middle row are all pushing on different angles, so there's no coordinated effort here. Now you can see that Alexander starts to drop his hips down, he's moved his feet backwards. He knows the only way to resist force is getting lower. But by then, it's too late. The Wallabies are already on roller skates going backwards. I've seen some people comment that the Lions should actually be penalised on this scrum because it's Tom Youngs who pops his head up first. As you'll see when we get back around to the other side of the scrum, Ben Robinson had hinged well before that, actually turns around, and as you can see the referee, he was penalised for boring back in. Let's look at how a loose head gets under a tight head. As they engage, they angle down, get the back of their head on the tight head's chest. Now, because their shoulders are below their hips, that's not strictly legal, but it's the way the best loose heads operate, and referees allow it. What they're aiming to do is to now bring their back up parallel to the ground, which will lift the tight head and weaken his position. It's not an easy thing to do, but tight heads know that's what the loose head is aiming to do, and have to know how to counter it. I'll go into a little more detail about that shortly, but first let's have a quick look at a sequence of images of that scrum looking at the loose head side for the Wallabies. These are provided by Shane Sullivan, and you'll start to get a sense of the trouble that Robinson was in and see him hinging. First up, let's have a look just as the two scrums have engaged. Robinson's just in the process of making his bind, and you can see he's angling slightly up, but Kane Douglas, his lock behind him, is angling down, and Michael Hooper's angling straight through. It's very inefficient from the Wallabies and leaves Robinson with not enough power behind him. Now when we go to the next image, Robinson's made his bind, and you'll see Adam Jones is angling slightly down on Robinson. Essentially, Jones is trying to keep Robinson down, who's trying to drive slightly up. As we move to the next image, you can see that Douglas has got his shape a little better, but both he and Hooper are driving straight through, while Robinson's driving slightly up, so they're not working together as a unit to generate force that goes through to the Lions. As we go to the next image, you'll see that Robinson has been successful in slightly lifting Jones up. I know the laws say both props have got to push flat, but they don't. Loosehead tries to push forward and up, tighthead tries to push forward and down. Despite the fact that Robinson's had a little win here, the power coming from behind Jones is too much, and you'll see that Robinson now is going to start to go backwards. As Jones has been able to get down underneath him, and you'll see now that Robinson's knees are in front of his hips, and it's very difficult for him now to resist the force. You can see him starting to take steps backwards to try and fix the problem, but it's too late. And now his position gets to the point where he actually hinges, shoulders go below his hips, and at that point he's liable to be penalised. Now because Robinson's hinged, Jones has got nothing left to push on, and you can see his knee actually touches the ground here. But Jones doesn't want this scrum to go down, so he gets back up and continues to drive through Robinson. From this position, Robinson's really got nowhere to go. He can't go back through Jones, he can't stand up because Jones is on top of him, and he can't go to ground because Jones is keeping him up. He wants the scrum to stay up so he can drive it backwards. Effectively, Robinson's just a passenger. The only option he has is to fold in and drive across Jones, which is what he was penalised for well before Youngs comes up out of this scrum. It was a very powerful scrum from the Lions.